One of the common issues that you will come across when you're trying to give PAILs rails for the thoracic spine is when we place the thoracic spine, once we've identified the area of the thoracic spine of which we're trying to expand, placing our client or athlete in this position with the foam roller in that specified area, and then placing our arms underneath an immovable object with our arms overhead. The issue you fall into almost 100% of the time is the person's going to report back to you that their arms go to sleep. So what becomes difficult for us to do is find a way to hold this passive stretch, the passive input, into the specified tissues for the prolonged time of being somewhere around that 2-minute marker. So here's a way that you can do this with either just a doorway, or you can use a squat rack to do this. Okay, all you need is a doorway or a squat rack. The squat rack, if you're using that version, all you're doing is using your hands against 2 posts, 2 immovable objects. So this is going to work just fine, and the squat rack will work just fine. So through your assessment, you've identified the area of the thoracic spine of which you're trying to expand ranges of motion in. How you're going to rig this up is it'll be different for each person depending on their arm length. So what we're going to do is place the foam roller through that region. I'm just going to arbitrarily make up an area. So I found the area of which I want to expand my range of motion. Now, I want to make sure when I set this up first is that I can actually reach with my hands the immovable object. But how we're starting it first is through our long passive hold. So we offer a long passive input. For this, the 2 issues, as I mentioned before, the issue that you'll have is if the arms are overhead, the arms go to sleep. Second is if you're hanging out there passively for a long time, most people aren't going to have the neck endurance to be holding their head just like this. So we solve that through 2 ways here. Right now, I don't need my arms underneath anything. I can actually just think of bowing the stretch and trying wherever the foam roller is touching on the opposite side, I'm trying to almost use that roller as the fulcrum point as to which to push the vertebrae that way through my passive stretch. And I'll allow gravity to just start to sink me into that. My hands are free now. Now my hands can come behind my head and support my head throughout this. Now this will take a lot of coaching from your end as to specify exactly where that fulcrum is taking place at. Because what we don't want is someone trying to reach back and just extend their whole spine and attempt to touch their head to the floor. That's not the objective. I am just locating a specified area of the spine where I want to get more extension. So I locate that, and I'm going to teach the client and athlete how to bow that stretch and how to target and specify where I want the stretch to come from. So I've supported my head, I've located that, and now I'm just going to start to move and bow the stretch and allow myself to sink deeper into that passively while I allow gravity to assist me in that. Throughout that, I want to encourage some diaphragmatic breathing. So while I'm hanging here for 2 minutes, I'm going to try to inhale on about a 4 count, exhale on an 8 count, trying to just calm my nervous system down as to coax my body into giving me the ultimate end range of motion passively. So now once I've held here roughly for 2 minutes, when I start my PAILs contraction, it goes as so. I'm going to hold the stretch in place. Now I have to let go of my head. I'm going to place my hands into the immovable object, being the doorway right now. My objective for this PAILs contraction is to try to crunch out of this motion exactly where the foam roller is touching. So that again is my fulcrum point. So I'm trying to crunch out of this. I start to irradiate the contraction through the entire body. I'm going to ramp up appropriately 10%, 20%, or 20%, 40%, up to my greatest, safest effort. I hold, hold, hold. Once I've built up the appropriate fatigue to do my rails, I can now actually support my head again if I need to. I grab, but nothing moves here. I grab onto my head and I try to use that fulcrum to actively pull myself further and further into the stretch. This time I'm really contracting everything on the opposing side, being those spinal erectors right next to the area of spine that I'm trying to work on. So I'm trying to really contract those, hold it isometrically, keep pulling myself actively deeper into the stretch. assuring that I'm not just trying to extend my whole spine over the roller, but just get motion out of that one area where the roller is touching. I cause fatigue, I relax, and I just allow gravity to sink me into that newly expanded range of motion. Now from there, I can hold the passive component for a little bit longer. There's no need for me to hold it for another 2 minutes. I already held it for 2 minutes. The cellular signal is there. All I have to do is hold it long enough that my body recovers in order to give another bout of pails and another bout of rails. So this should set your folks up much more successfully than trying to put their hands over their head and having their neck get too fatigued and having their arms go to sleep.